Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. So glad you tuned in today. Our subject today is our sleep disorders among children. They're actually more prevalent than many people realize. And oftentimes, parents don't even recognize when their own child might have a sleep disorder. My guest today is Dr. Chris Winter, author of the book, The Rested Child: Why Your Tired, Wired, or Irritable Child May Have a Sleep Disorder and How to Help. Dr. Winter, thanks for being here. Great to see you.
It's good to talk to you and see you too, Lori.
So, what made you decide to write this book about childhood sleep disorders?
Yeah, it was probably two things. One is so in my clinic, we see adults and children just with sleep disorders. So I'm a neurologist, and that's my sort of specialty. And one thing that made me want to write the book was that over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been such a sharp increase in the number of kids that we see, which is great because it probably indicates that people are actually paying attention to the problem, and not sort of ignoring it. The second reason I wrote it was because when you look for resources about kids and sleep, there really aren't that many. In fact, when I was talking to my publisher and my literary agent about it, their first response was, God, do we really need another book about kids and sleep? And I said, I'm not really aware of any books about kids and sleep. And they said, the books you read when you've got a baby and you're trying to get it to sleep through the night. And it sort of dawned on me that for a lot of people, that's what they consider to be a book about kids and sleep, how to get your baby on a schedule and sleeping through the night, which is super important. But it kind of gives the impression that once your child is sleeping through the night, that you're done when it comes to monitoring for healthy sleep. And to me, that's just the beginning of all kinds of sleep problems that can affect our young children, teenagers, and even up to the college years. It's sort of a never-ending sort of monitoring and evaluation to make sure our kids are getting the healthiest sleep possible.
Wow, that is a very interesting observation that you made. And now that you mention it, that's true. As a parent myself, I have two grown children. But yes, I remember, being concerned about their sleep and getting them to sleep and how long they sleep when they were babies. But once they, got out of the crib or even out of the bassinet, that concern kind of goes away. So when you talk about childhood sleep disorders, how many of these sleep disorders are there and what are they?
So there's a lot, probably more than you could even put into a book. When you look at adult sleep disorders, there's something like 88 diagnosable disorders related to sleep. And kids would have a very similar number. In fact, they may have actually more, given the fact that there's some things that are unique to kids. So in broad strokes, we look at children and sort of classify them as children who may have difficulty sleeping. So they are going to bed and struggling to fall asleep at night. I just talked to a 9-year-old girl today who was having a lot of difficulty with waking up a lot during the night. So she could fall asleep okay, and the first hour was okay, but she just woke up and moved constantly during the night. In fact, the only reason it really came to the mother's attention was because the mother had been divorced. So she and the daughter were living with her family and sharing a bed. And she said, Chris, the very first night that I spent with my daughter, it was incredible. She moves constantly during the night and has very little recollection of doing it. So, from anything from breathing disturbances, teeth grinding, nocturnal seizures, acid reflux, restless legs, or periodic limb movements. There's just countless numbers of things intrinsically that can worsen a kid's sleep, and kids are pretty resilient. And the problem becomes a lot of children who have sleep disorders don't look that sleepy. They look irritable. They look like they have attention problems. They look like they have mood problems. So not only is it difficult to diagnose these problems if we're not looking for them, but they're very easily misdiagnosed as other conditions.
So can you first talk about some of the symptoms, how parents should maybe be alerted to the fact that their child might have a sleep disorder?
Absolutely. And I can understand that sort of sentiment. It's a common sentiment among adults. I've got terrible sleep apnea, but who really cares? And what we know is these disorders, both in adults and children, have acute sort of consequences, but they also have long-term consequences in terms of our health, our academic performance and achievement, our mood, weight control, diabetes, heart disease, the development of things like Alzheimer's disease, all relate directly to sleep. So is your child going to develop a heart disease this weekend if he doesn't sleep well? Not at all. In fact, one of my favorite sleep doctors, a guy up in Indianapolis, Dr. Singh, talks about young people like a brand new car. You can drive them roughly. You can take that new car down a road and with all the potholes and the car does just fine because it's new. And kids do really well with sleep disorders in some ways because they're young, they've got energy, people aren't really looking out for them, there's not a lot of expectations on them, so they can hide very easily. The consequence becomes when these things get diagnosed as disorders that they are not. For instance, a child at school who's constantly fidgeting, bothering the kids next to them, always tapping his pencil, even though the teacher tells him repeatedly to stop doing it, getting into trouble, off task. That sounds a lot like a kid who has attention deficit disorder. And frankly, the common treatments for that disorder are stimulants. So when you think about it, wow, we're going to give my child who's hyperactive a stimulant. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's like giving somebody who struggles with their weight an appetite stimulant, But when you think about that child as maybe not having ADHD, but perhaps having an underlying sleep disorder where his sleep is either interrupted or disturbed in some way where he's not getting the full benefit of the sleep, that child is going to be tired. He's going to be sleepy. And so giving him the stimulant can sometimes make him feel better because you're actually filling in that gap of sleepiness that he has. And it's important to understand that kids don't manifest sleepiness like adults. When you look in a third grade classroom and a teacher's up there talking about different kinds of clouds in the sky, the kids who are sleepy are not sitting there doing that thing that adults do when they're, nodding off in church. They actually fight the feeling. To them, that feeling of sleepiness is uncomfortable and something they want to work against, versus the adult who might be sitting there feeling that sleepiness come on and just sort of goes with it and closes his eyes and lets his head nod backwards. So it's important that we not look for sleepiness in children the way that we look for it in adults. We want to look for behavioral disruptions, sudden school performance changes, sudden changes in mood. You can also even see things like changes in growth, where a kid has always been 75th, 80th percentile in height and weight at the pediatrician's office, and now suddenly seems to be dropping off because we make growth hormone when we're in deep sleep. So if we have something fragmenting our deep sleep, we may not make the chemicals and hormones that allow us to grow properly. So it's really important for parents to pay attention to their instincts. When parents ask, what am I looking for? I think the simple word is change. He was making A's, now he's not. She was potty trained, and now she's gone back to wetting the bed. She was quiet at night. Now she's making a lot of noise, snoring, talking, getting up and walking around at night. All these things are clues that potentially there may be something wrong with sleep.
We're going to take a quick break and be right back with Dr. Chris Winters. The book is called The Rested Child.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep. as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we're continuing our discussion with Dr. Chris Winter, author of The Rested Child. We're talking about how you can recognize a possible sleep disorder in your child. And Dr. Winter, it's just so important if your child is having some sort of difficulty, some sort of change in their lifestyle behavior patterns, to see if they have a sleep disorder first before maybe having the child misdiagnosed and actually maybe put on some sort of medication that they don't need, right?
It happens all the time, and it's important to understand a couple things. One is that 2 out of every 3 kids are going to have some sort of sleep problem or sleep disorder by the time they get to their college years. So it's important for a listener or viewer to understand that these are not rare problems, and they're sometimes portrayed as such. The second thing is to understand that the doctors that are evaluating your kids, everybody's going back to school now. Everybody has to go see the pediatrician for their back to school physical. It's important to understand that the average pediatrician in this country is probably received somewhere in the order of about 4 hours of education or training about sleep, with about a quarter of pediatricians or primary care doctors having never received any. So we have this sort of understanding that, well, when we go to an OB doctor, they've gotten a lot of training in terms of delivering babies. And when we go to see a neurologist, they've gotten a lot of training in terms of things like Alzheimer's disease and strokes and headaches. When we go to see a pediatrician, they've had all kinds of training for our kids who have struggles falling asleep or sleeping at night, or the kids who we can't seem to even wake up. They're always tired. And the simple fact is that isn't true. So again, trust your parental instinct. If you've latched onto a pediatrician who's just a dynamite, individual and knows everything about sleep and has great plans, and you feel comfortable with the strategy that she's put together, great. If you're getting sort of melatonin gummy bears and a pat on the head, it's important for you to advocate for your child and say, hey, look, I might think it might be a good idea for me to, take my son or my daughter to go talk to a sleep specialist. What do you think about that? My answer would be that they should think that that's a great idea. If you have a doctor saying, I don't think that you should do that, or I don't think that's a good idea, I would probably say get another doctor. But there are specialists out there who do nothing but sleep. That is their career. I mean, that's what we do in our clinic. We just see, again, adults and kids with sleep problems. So you don't want me delivering your baby, but maybe the doctor who's diagnosing your child as ADHD or depressed or anxious may not be the right person to sort of look at the whole picture, particularly when it comes to the sleep of your child.
So many people know that there are sleep disorder centers near them. So you're saying that a sleep disorder center that treats adults also is okay to take your child to?
I mean, I think it's preferable for you to call the center and say, do you see kids? Now, there's a distinction that needs to be made. my office practice is clinical. A patient and their mother walk in and we talk about sleep. We may or may not decide to do any kind of sleep study or sleep evaluation, which generally happens at a sleep center, where they do sleep studies. So, for instance, we see children of any age, but the sleep center that you refer to may have certain limits or expectations. We don't see kids under the age of 2, et cetera. Every center is different. So just make sure that when you're talking to a place that you're saying, look, I've got some concerns about my kid's school performance. There's talk about him being diagnosed with ADHD. I'd like to discuss this with a sleep specialist before we move further with this diagnosis. That should be available to anyone. And that's sort of a clinic. You walk down and sit down in an office and talk. Again, that sleep study that comes from that is really a different thing. Nobody should be jumping right into a sleep study. There really should be a conversation with an individual who feels comfortable discussing and treating disorders of sleep in kids first.
And in your book, you talk about some ways to help make sure that your child is getting proper sleep. First of all, how much sleep should children be getting?
So that's an interesting number. And there's charts in the book that kind of show that based upon the age of the child. So if you've got a newborn or you have a 6-month-old, that number can be quite different. And those things change as we age. They never stop changing. All the way up into our senior citizen years, we're generally reducing the amount of sleep that we need over time. And it's important to understand that if you're the parent of a newborn and your best friend had a baby within a couple days of you, and you're sitting somewhere and kind of swapping baby notes and strategies, it's important to understand that the difference in sleep need between two identically aged children who are, 3 months old can be as much as 8 hours. And that's really important to understand because the techniques that your friend is using in terms of nap schedules and nighttime routines, if they've got a child who needs 6 hours more sleep than your child does, you're sort of setting yourself up to fail before you even start. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the book, is to understand that just like your child genetically received information from you and your partner, hair color, eye color, stature, etc., whether your earlobes are dangly or attached, all these things are controlled by our genes, so too is our sleep. So if you and your partner are real night owls, like to stay up late, and don't require as much sleep as the average individual, you're on the other side of the bell curve, then your children can inherit those things too. So it's always very important for us to understand that sleep need, we can look at the averages that kids of different ages need, and they're helpful in sort of pushing us in one direction or another, but always understand that your child is a unique individual who's never walked this earth before and is completely unique in his or her genetic makeup. So we always want to tailor the way we structure a kid's sleep schedule to the precise amount of sleep that child needs. And one of the things I talk about in the book is how do you go about figuring that out? It's not terribly hard.
All right, we're going to take another quick break and be right back with Dr. Chris Winter. The book is called The Rested Child. Stay with us.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back, and we're continuing our conversation with Dr. Chris Winter, author of The Rested Child. So, Dr. Winter, so many of us parents, I remember when my children were little, had difficulty getting our kids to bed on time. And I remember a lot of the problem was me. I didn't organize their, their studying or their homework time, and just getting all the stuff done. What are some of your tips to get a child to bed early / on time?
I appreciate your honest comments there. I think they're important. It's difficult, and as kids get older, it can become far more difficult because of the things you're describing. Technology, homework, extracurricular activities, sports, all sort of stand in the way sometimes of your child going to bed on time. A couple tips that I would suggest. Number one, I think it's important for us as parents to focus more attention on the wake up time than the bedtime. And what I mean by that is there is a saying, if you do martial arts, that if you're trying to, or if you wrestle, if you try to control somebody, control the head and the body will follow. For most kids, if you control the wake up time and you make it pretty structured, they will regulate their own bedtime. You will find that the bedtime starts to kind of take care of itself. Now, we always want to wake children up positively with a smile. It's never meant to be a punishment. But we want to be firm about that. And when we allow there to be laxity in that wake-up time, it can create a lot of sleep problems. And we're now just sort of emerging from this sort of post-pandemic situation where a lot of kids in this country were basically staying at home and going to school. And there's a lot of negatives to that. The biggest being that they don't have to get up and go to their swim practice in the morning because that was canceled. And now their first class doesn't even start until 9:30, so they can literally wake up at 9:29, turn the computer on, and start their day. They don't go anywhere. They're still in their bedroom. They may do their entire school in their bedroom and then just stay in their bedroom and watch some TV shows or play some games. So we really want to make sure that the morning starts with a very structured situation, meaning that they get up out of bed, into some light, around other people, have some food. And that's one of the great things about going to school is it provides all those structures for people. So even if you, like you said, never got your kids right on the right schedule, at least the school was, you had to catch the bus on time, you had to eat lunch at this certain time, you had gym class, outdoor activities, all these things are very important. On the flip side, we want to have a target sort of for bedtime, meaning that we would always tell our kids, you need to be in bed in your bedrooms by these certain times. Now, we never really told them you had to turn the light out, but we needed you to be in your bedrooms, kind of relaxing, doing your homework, reading a book. I don't think electronics or screens should be in a bedroom. That's a parent's decision to make. In our house, all of our phones get plugged up in the kitchen. So everybody, including the kids, can see that the adults are following that rule too. I don't think it's ever a great idea for kids to have screens and phones in their room. They'll argue and say, I need it for my alarm. Well, you know what? There were alarm clocks before there were cell phones, and they work perfectly well. I will buy you one at the store this weekend. It has little bell. It goes ding, 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 ding. I'll show you how to set it. It's really fun. It's kind of like reading a map. You have no idea. Your generation has no idea how to read a map or set an alarm clock, but I will show you how to do it. So I think it's really important that the evening you have a designated time when they're in their bedroom, but really try to take the stress out of, you need to go to bed now. If I catch you in bed awake, you're going to get in trouble. Let them handle it as long as you handle the wake up time. Lighting can be very effective, as can temperature. So one thing that you can do as a parent that your kids know nothing about is after dinner, start to dim the lights in the house. It's a great project to go to the home improvement store this weekend and buy some dimmer switches. So you really create a softer lighting in the evening. Turn the temperature down in your thermostat 3 or 4 degrees after dinner. That drop in temperature and that drop in light serves as a real natural trigger for kids to want to get sleepy. And if you don't believe me, take your kids camping sometime and look at the way they sleep when they're outdoors, sleeping as the sun goes down and the temperature goes down versus when they're inside with computers in their face and sort of a constant temperature all the time.
Well, this is super practical information. We're going to take a final break and be right back with Dr. Chris Winter. Stay tuned.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Stay connected with CBN News all day across our platforms.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. We could talk all day about this subject, but wanted to thank my guest, Dr. Chris Winter, author of The Rested Child. Dr. Winter, where can people get more information?
So my book is available. Books are available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. I have a website, wchriswinter.com, and on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Sports Sleep Doc, SportSleepDoc. You can follow me there. I try to put good information about sleep on all my social media feeds.
Well, thanks again for being with us. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson, and we'll see you again next time.